All right, people. Good news, bad news time for these Washington Huskies. Good news, bad news, and I gotta say, I think the bad news is a little bit bigger than the good news, unfortunately. Not a good turn of events for these Washington Huskies, but it is what it is. We got to talk about it. At the end of the day, we can say that this particular result has nothing to do with us. But at the same time, we wouldn't be here if we had taken care of business against Arizona State. So either way, you're not playing for a playoff spot or anything like that. The Huskies were never going to make the playoff. So some people are going to say it doesn't really matter that much, but it matters something. It matters more than nothing, I think. So last night, USC lost the Pac-12 championship game. They hung in there for most of the game, and then in the fourth quarter, it just completely blew up in their face. Utah ran away with it, ended up putting 47 on that really bad USC defense. And I got to say, I got to take back what I said. We absolutely could have beaten USC with the way that defense is. I didn't know it was that bad. Wow. But it happened, and the good news is USC is now out of the playoff, so I like that. Ohio State's probably going to take their place. Alabama might get in now too because TCU lost. I don't know about that. I don't know if that should happen, but that's at least on the table. So USC not making the playoffs, so that's good. We like that. But there is a domino effect here. And the domino effect is that the Huskies are not going to make the Rose Bowl now because everything gets bumped, everything gets moved. We don't get to make the Rose Bowl. So, unfortunately, even though we had a really great season, even though honestly, as a Huskies fan, I feel like this team is right now playing better than any team in this conference. We're not going to get it. So, with the Rose Bowl being out, with the Rose Bowl being off the table, it's looking like the Alamo Bowl. And that is, in terms of prestige and significance, pretty fat step down, right? Like the Rose Bowl is one of the original bowls. Well, what do they call it? The original six. It's a, Big Six Bowl. It's one of the most legendary bowl games of all time. I know this year it's obviously not for any kind of a championship. That's a big deal. The Alamo Bowl, it's just not the same. But that looks like that's where we're headed right now. So at the end of the day, if you beat Arizona State a couple months ago, you don't have to worry about this. But it still sucks that the opportunity was there for us. We just needed USC to take care of business, and they got their tails whipped, which was fun to watch, but is it really worth it when it means, well, this? So, the Alamo Bowl is now the most likely outcome here, and we're probably going to play the Texas Longhorns. The 2022 Texas Longhorns, most notably, excuse me, are coached by Steve Sarkisian. I think we all remember him. I think we all recall his tenure as coach here. He did some good things, did some bad things, left us high and dry for USC, where he did not last long, had a lot of personal life issues since he's been a college coach, and now he finds himself as the coach of the Texas Longhorns, admittedly leading them to their best year in a while, outside of maybe one or two seasons over this last decade plus where the Longhorns have been far worse than they've had any right to be. I've said this before, I'll say it again. All of the best high school recruits play in Texas. So it's a joke that the Longhorns can't be a national title contender almost every year. But they were pretty good this year. They had a top 25 offense, almost a top 20 offense, and they had a top 30 defense. So they're giving you more than 5 touchdowns a game. They're allowing about 3 touchdowns a game on average. You put it together, and that's a pretty stellar team. Now, you look at that and you go, hey, this should be a 10-win team if they have a really great offense and a really great defense. How are they only 8-4? Well, you look at the schedule and it kind of makes sense. So they lost by 1 point to Alabama, at the time the number one team in the country. They've lost to Texas Tech by a field goal, very close game. They lost to Oklahoma State by a touchdown, one-score game. Number 11 overall Oklahoma State at the time. And they lost to TCU, the number 4 team in the country at that time, and until earlier today, an undefeated team. So their schedule has been rough. And outside of those 4 losses, they've done some pretty big things. Blown out most of their opponents, including a 49-0 win over Oklahoma, beating West Virginia by 18 points, 3-score game. They beat Kansas State, who, by the way, won the Big 12 today. Blown out Kansas, pretty solid win over Baylor. It's a team that probably could have been a 10-win team in a different timeline, but they were kind of cursed with a bad schedule and they lost some tough, close games. I mean, they had to play Bama, they had to play TCU, Okie State, Kansas State. Like, this was a tough schedule, and they lost some really tough games. So this is probably better than 8 wins if you're looking at it. Against a more normalized schedule, without facing all these hyper-elite teams, this team probably wins at least 9, if not 10 games. Now, they're not as good as Ohio State, but I think they're a little better than this. So what I can say about the Longhorns in 2022, offensively, they do have a very intriguing quarterback prospect, Quinn Ewers. He's considered one of the most exciting quarterback prospects for the 2024 draft. But in 2022, his second year, or he can't declare, right? So we know he's going to be back next year. So this year, he was okay, right? Like, you look at these numbers, and they're nothing special. 1,800 passing yards, 57% completion, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Honestly, his backup, Hudson Card, is probably played better than him. Not saying Hudson Card is better, but this year Hudson Card probably played better football. It's just being honest. And the main draw of this Texas offense is Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs in this draft. And the running game for the Longhorns in general is top-notch. Bijan Robinson averages over 6 yards a carry, 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns. He's given you, after this game, if he plays well, he'll probably have over 2,000 yards from scrimmage on the year. He only needs like 106 yards. Already got 20 touchdowns. And Roscoe Johnson behind him, not much of a drop-off, 6 yards a carry. He's given you almost 700 yards from scrimmage, 6 touchdowns. So this Texas offense can run the ball on just about anybody. Now, I don't mind that because it kind of plays into the strength of the Huskies defense, where they're a little better stopping the run than stopping the pass. But this is a run game that can run on anybody, so I don't think it's just going to be easy because of that. And you can see, like, their leading receiver has less than 700 yards receiving. This is not a team that wants to pass the ball a lot. This is a team that wants to be run first. So they're very good at that, but it is, you could call it a little bit of a one-dimensional attack right now. I think Quinn will be better next year, and the Longhorns might have a different offense, but this offense, they want to pound that rock. Defensively, like I said, they're really good. They're not elite. Maybe they're not great, but they're really good. They have a bunch of different guys who are pretty good getting pressure. They don't have a ton of guys who I know of as being like obvious NFL prospects, to my knowledge, maybe Jalen Ford. But overall, this Texas Longhorn defense does play really well together. They actually have a guy named Byron Murphy II, who I'm pretty sure is not the son of our Byron Murphy, unless Byron Murphy impregnated a woman when he was like 8 years old. I don't think that would work. But yeah, it's a good all-around defense. I do expect this offense to put their best foot forward in this game and take care of business and win those battles. But as for us winning the game, that's a little bit harder to say. You look at the record, and you go, okay, obviously this Huskies team is better. This Huskies team is playing really good football right now, particularly on offense. Their offense is humming. But this Texas defense, while it's really good and it's going to pose some kind of obstacle for us, it's not better than the Wazoo defense was. And we went into Pullman and did mostly whatever we wanted to do on that Cougars D. So offhand, I would expect to be able to go into the Alamo Bowl and beat this team, but I am concerned about the running game. I know our run defense has been pretty much fine this year. I know it's held up fairly well. I know it's mostly been passing teams that have punished us, but this is such a dominant rushing attack. They have two running backs averaging 6 yards a carry. They have two guys that can do a ton of damage on you. Bijan might be the best running back in college football this year. He's certainly the guy who's expected to go the highest in the draft, at least. So, straight up, I'm gonna say I expect to win because I believe this Huskies offense can't be stopped. But at the same time, I acknowledge that this is a well-rounded Texas team that can do a lot of things to you on offense and defense, and it's possible that their strength, their running game, could be better than anything else in this game. So I'm excited. It's a letdown after thinking you were going to get to play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl because that's an 11-win team. That's a big-time bowl. If you win that game against the Buckeyes, you become known as one of the best teams in the country. You might even end up in the top 5 at the end of the year in the rankings. Obviously, you're not going to be a champion because you're not going to get to play for that, but you might end up being in that top 5, top 6. Here, I mean, Texas is barely ranked right now, and part of that is because they've lost some really tough games. But as of right now, I would say that Washington should be expected to win this game. They're playing better. They're playing their best football right now overall, I think. With what they did to the Cougars, a pretty good Cougars team, they're playing their best football right now. All right, I will see you guys later. Bow down to Washington. Kind of a letdown, but this Longhorns team is good. And at the end of the day, if we don't win this Alamo Bowl, assuming this is the Alamo Bowl we get, then we can't say nothing about Ohio State. We can't say nothing about the Rose Bowl because if you're not going to beat Texas, you're probably not going to even be competitive against Ohio State. So we'll see how it breaks out, but let's get it. All right, see you guys later. Bow down.